We're in Springfield, Tennessee today at the home of Charlotte and Jim Gray. You are in for a treat. We're going to see some wonderful things. Everything started with one plan, a water feature around a tree. And guess what? Things evolved, as all gardening does. It became whimsical and magical throughout the garden. And I can't wait to show you. And here is Charlotte Gray. And we are in her backyard, and it's wonderful. It's shady, it's nice and cool today, it's gonna be hot. So, Charlotte, I want you to tell me all about your ferns. You have quite a few native ferns.
Yes, we started planting some of these ferns back when we first built this house in 1987. It was a totally wooded lot, and we managed to try to clear a space without hurting the trees. Some of the first ones we planted actually came off of the Red River with a young man that had a local nursery that did a few of the rhododendrons and shrubbery that we planted, and they did so wonderfully back here. Some of these are 30 years old, some of these right in here.
And what are we looking at right here?
This is a native Christmas fern. And we actually have my husband's sister and her husband have several hundred acres up in Camden, Tennessee, and these ferns are so prolific on it that we have brought back, every time we go we'll kind of get a trunk load sort of them and just continue to plant them. Bugs don't bother them, nothing bothers them.
So tell me about some of the other ferns besides this one that's back here.
There's some ostrich fern up against my house that gets big, like the tail of an ostrich, and it likes really wet conditions and deep shade. If you like that condition, that's the fern for you. The ferns that you see behind me, back over towards the ferry house back there, they're called sensitive ferns. I dug those from Camden and brought them, and they just like this sort of condition.
And they curl up when you touch them?
No, they don't.
Okay, so it's a different kind of
sensitive fern. It's a different kind of
Okay.
sensitive fern. It got its name from the early colonists. Evidently, it's an old native fern to this area.
Okay.
And they called it sensitive fern because it's so sensitive to the cold weather that was the first thing to go in the fall.
And I see you have some Solomon seal, some variegated.
Yes, there's variegated Solomon seal that sort of hangs over the pond, has little white drooping bell-like flowers on it all spring, but it stays green like that all year. And then there's the giant Solomon seal that planted itself that was just, I guess, was on this property, and eventually the conditions were right.
And you have some wild ginger.
Wild ginger is an interesting little plant. That's a wildflower. There's probably 100 varieties of wildflowers back here, which is one of my favorite hobbies.
I know, you said we just missed bloom time for those.
You just missed that. April is the best time to get all the wildflowers. But this little heart-shaped flower we might see around mixed in with this vinca is wild ginger. And it has a little flower that lays on the ground, doesn't smell good, so it'll attract the ants to pollinate it. But it just comes up and sort of fills in bare spots like a little ground cover. In fact, it planted itself on the lower pond down there right next to the lily pads. And you would think that it's a lily pad up there,
right? But
it's really not. It's this little wild ginger.
And I see you have several varieties of hydrangeas.
We do. The oak leaf hydrangeas are in the fullest bloom right now.
Charlotte, I want you to tell me about your fairy house here and how it came to evolve.
Well, when we put in the pond, we wrapped the stream around that big red oak trunk, and it was just sort of a part of the water feature it was such a big trunk. But as the 30 years passed, and it stretched its two really big arms that it had towards the sun right over the wing of our house over there. And when we had a big crane out and had to take down another tree, we decided we probably should take it down for safety's sake. But I said, only if you will leave me a good 4 feet, because I think I see a fairy house in the offing. And if I can have that to put in the centerpiece crook of the pond, then I'll be sad, because I am a tree lover. But, it might be the best.
Well, it looks great. I want to talk about the hostas. I was surprised to see them actually growing in the stream.
People may not realize this, but those hostas have just been the dirt root ball sort of stuck in a crack with the rocks around it. They've probably been there a good 5 or 6 years. They just grow in the water with no pot. In the winter, when the frost gets all the hostas, you just clip it back. And then first thing in the spring, when your other hostas start coming out, those hostas will spring right back up in your pond.
And what other flowers do you have planted in between the rocks over there?
Well, if you go and get you a 6-pack of Impatiens, or if you've got a bigger spot, you can get a little bigger one. They are perfectly happy to just take them right out of that 6-pack and stick them in between a rock that'll secure them where the bottom of the little dirt ball there is touching the water. And they will just grow and bloom, and they'll get large like they would be.
Well, it's a
in
nice little
pot.
punch of color. Charlotte, I noticed you had several Japanese maples as well as some Japanese painted ferns too.
I did. The thing about a Japanese maple is all about structure. And the Japanese maple that's there by the pond where it starts to overlook the lower falls, you'll notice the big crook in it where the leaves hang right over and shade the waterfall as the stream comes off. And then there's several others in the yard. The largest one has been here the 30 years, but it hasn't grown. They stay small. They're lace-leafed Japanese maples, so they are smaller.
Charlotte, I've really enjoyed visiting with you today in this cool spot in your yard, and I've also enjoyed the water feature and your beautiful ferns. Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you for joining me in the garden this morning. I enjoyed sharing it with you.
For inspiring garden tours, growing tips, and garden projects, visit our website at volunteergardener.org or on YouTube at the Volunteer Gardener channel, and like us on Facebook.